Welcome back, everybody, to Two Guys and a Stack of Comics. My name is Reed. Along with me, as always, is Mike. Mike, one of the great things about being a comic book fan and running a comic book YouTube channel, as you and I have tried to do here a little over a year now, we've been doing that, is there's no shortage of folks who are upset with the comic book market, not happy with the way things are going. And kind of the thesis statement you and me had when we did this channel is we wanted to call out the things we didn't like, but we wanted to spend more time talking about the stuff that we do like. And so,
Absolutely.
one of the things is we hear from folks a lot of time about how there's not a lot of great comic books going. So you and I today, we've spotlighted this book before, but we wanted to really do kind of a thorough deep dive of why Conan the Barbarian from Titan Comics is really the comic book that we feel comic book fans should be reading. Why we feel like Titan is a publisher that truly appreciates its fans, appreciates its source material. So we just kind of wanted to do a deep dive into all the things that we feel like they're doing right and why this book continually seems to reward its readers as we go forward. Mike, you were mentioning to me, you were catching up today, you were reading Battle of the Blackstone, the new event book that they're having. And one of the things you and I talked about, and I'll get your opinion on this.
Yep.
One of the most frustrating things as a modern comic book fan is when you are reading a run of comic books like Flash or Batman or something like that. And you have where plot's rolling along pretty good, you're happy with the story, and then it all comes to a screeching dead halt because there's an event. And for 2 to 3 months, your book is basically thrown into a meaningless tie-in around an event that you may or may not be reading.
But
And
it's a crisis, so you got
yeah,
to buy it. Yeah.
yeah, it's a crisis event, whatever's happening, the absolute power or Venom War or whatever they're doing with these
Right.
books. One of the great things we've seen with Conan is while there has been a lot of build-up to this Battle in the Blackstone comic book event series that they're doing, and it certainly pays off if you've been reading from the beginning. I think one of the coolest things is in addition to the event book coming out, you have a separate story happening in the main title. It's honoring like the Frost Giant's daughter story with a main artist. It's not a fill-in kind of artist. It's Doug Brathwaite on the art for it. And so if you're someone who just picks up the main Conan title, you're still getting a completely separate individual story while at the
Yep.
same time you have this amazing event. For me, that's been a huge differentiator for me this year in watching the book. How you feel about how they've handled that?
Oh yeah. I mean, so you got to be like a fly on the wall at Titan Comics, and they're like, "Man, Conan's going really good. Uh, what else can we do? Um, how about let's do some more Conan? Great idea." and um,
Yeah,
and then they give it to us, and then you're right. It's so cool that you can be a reader of the main title, and you don't have to buy into the Conan Battle of Blackstone if you don't want to. You're still getting a complete issue, but chances are, if you
you're
like
picking
to
up both.
read,
Yeah.
you're getting them both because what's better than Conan? More Conan. Yeah, so they put it out there, and it's just so great that this other story you can pick it up from the beginning and just jump in. You don't have to have read a year's worth of the other title to just jump right into this book. And the way they do it brilliantly at the in the opening of every issue is, you've got this little
You
thing
get the
here.
cool map and they give you
Yeah.
the complete summation of what's going on. Absolutely.
And they give you that great quote from the Median Chronicles about Conan and the little bit about under his sandaled feet,
Yeah,
because he was the original sword and sandal guy that had that big resurgence in the 70s when Barry Windsor Smith, drew him for Marvel. Uh, there
absolutely.
was a, there was a huge influx of what they called sword and sandal or the sword and sorcerer kind of comic books. But it all goes back to Robert E. Howard back in the 30s when he was just cranking out pulp material on his typewriter, and it was genius. And the characters that they culled from those early pulp days and put into this Battle of the Blackstone is just a stroke of genius. And if you're a Howard fan, how cool is it to see Solomon Kane with
Solomon Kane
Conan,
taking on
like
Conan.
his two signature characters, It was just, you gotta love it. And the thing about Conan is that, the way they pair the artists and Jim Zub's writing it all, right?
Yeah.
Um, he's writing both the main line and this one, and the art doesn't suffer. I mean, they've got good art on Battle of the Blackstone. They've got good art on the main title, and
Hmm.
um, it's just like the way they picked their creative teams is just great, and the fact that they don't get stolen away after 3 or 6 issues into something else is, I guess, a minor miracle in this day and age. Um,
Yeah,
but you gotta
that's the
love it.
crazy part is the consistency. And I think, we talk about why this book is great. I think one of the things is I think one of the things that's really hurt nerd culture is the motivation behind the people who are running the creative stuff behind it. When you look at a lot of franchises, be it Star Wars or Star Trek, Marvel or DC, I think we've seen in the last couple of years people who come in and they're not fans of the material. And their goal is they want the platform of the material to address either concerns they've had with it or problems that they've had with the material in the past. There's a great example of the recent Joker film that came out where, Todd Phillips, the guy who directed the movie, basically has absolute disdain for DC Comics, has absolute disdain for the character of the Joker, and has disdain for fans of the Joker. And yet they put that man in charge of a $200 million movie, and then it doesn't work, and they act shocked, like, why didn't this work? And I think that's one of the cool things you get out of Titan with Conan is you can tell Jim Zub's a fan. You can tell Jeff Shanks, who writes the stuff in the back, those essays in the back, that they're huge fans. That these are people who look at Robert E. Howard's work and they like what that was there. They
Oh
want to build
yeah.
on it. They want to honor it, but they want to make sure that it's consistent with what was created. They're not trying to fix Conan or fix Solomon Kane or fix Robert E. Howard's work. They're honoring it. Are they polishing it up a little bit? Probably. But the thing that you have to love about it is even these, they put these essays in the back that the Jeff Shanks write. And it's great to read those because it shows how much research went into these books as they go. When you look at a lot of modern Marvel and DC books, I think there's some writers that you would look at the book and if you told them like, hey, what can you tell me? If I bet there's guys writing Amazing Spider-Man, or if you said, tell me about Steve Ditko or tell me about Stan Lee, they might know a few things, but not nearly what these guys seem to put into every single issue, where their
No, I
goal is
mean,
to go, man, we love these characters and we want to honor them.
and if you're reading your Conan comics, you gotta check out that back page because it is just chock full of juicy tidbits of the history of the writer and the material. So yeah, you can tell like, and the same they do the same thing with Blade Runner too. My other favorite title. Like this is a spin-off book here, but you
Yeah.
don't have to know anything about Blade Runner 2049 to pick up Tokyo Nexus and enjoy it. And look how well, the artist for this. I mean, this is the style that you want for Blade Runner,
Yeah.
and they deliver it there. It's like they curate these creative teams to put these books out, and you can tell that they really appreciate the property that they probably paid a lot of licensing money to get. They appreciated
Mhm.
it, respected it, and give it its worth. And Conan is just another example of Titan, and they're just doing things right there. What can I say?
Yeah, I think the one thing you mentioned, I think getting the artists that really fit the character. And I think that's an important thing. When you look at, they've had De La Torre, they've had Brathwaite, I think Jonas Sharf is doing the art on the Battle of the Blackstone event.
Yep.
One of the things that's really cool about Conan is they pair artists who fit for that sword and sandal kind of world that he has. It's a little more kind of gritty and visceral art that just has a little bit of an edge to it. And I think that's one of the complaints we have about the big two is there's certainly been, I know for the Flash, you and me have both seen this in recent times of the Flash, where it's not even necessarily a bad artist. It's just not a good artist for the Flash, right? It might be a good artist to write to draw a Superman book or a Hawkman book or something, but with the Flash, with the motion and the speed and how the Flash moves, you'd want a certain artist who can draw that and really illustrate that well. And it seems like there's characters like that where sometimes they'll get an artist who's not necessarily bad, but they're not a good fit for the character. Whereas with Conan, it kind of seems like they have completely gone to this angle of no, you're going to draw a book the Conan way. You're going to come into this book, and it doesn't matter if your art looks one way. If you're going to write on this title or draw on this title, you're going to fit the tone that this should have. And I think that's the cool thing that's really been here is I think the big two, especially because this has been going, we're talking 15 issues now. We've had a couple event tie-ins. We've had stuff like the Conan, Savage Sword of Conan stuff. There hasn't really been any art in any of them where you look and go, man, that is not a fit at all for Conan. Whereas I think if you go over 12 to 15 issues of Batman or Spider-Man, you're going to get an issue or two where even if you like the artist, it's like, man, I don't really know that that was a good fit for this character. And it just shows a lot of the intention they've had in what they're doing.
I agree. I think that's a lost art in the comic book field is how to pair the right creators with the right subject. And I know they think about it, but you kind of wonder at some point, where the that be didn't step in and say, yeah, you're great, but let's put you on this title rather than that title. I think that's kind of a lost art. It's something that definitely happened in the old days, where artists were clamoring to draw this title or that title, and
It harkens
editors.
back to what Ditko and Kirby, right? You had
Yeah,
Kirby was supposed to be on Spider-Man, and instead they decided to make Ditko because Ditko's art was a better fit for what Stan Lee was looking for. And
that's the
that's
that's the legendary example. But that kind of stuff went on every day.
mhm.
And you just kind of wonder if the studios, don't have a deep a team as they would like. I don't know. All I can say is that uh, Conan seems to do it well. The
I
pairing of
think
the
that's the
art
crazy
and the
part is it's
writing.
really hard for me to believe that Titan has resources that Marvel or DC don't. And so I think
Yeah,
it comes down to the intention behind the book of this feels like a book that was made by Conan fans for fans of Conan. And I think that's the cool part that we're getting is I think so often with the modern comic books, we get folks who maybe they might like the character, but they're not a huge fan, or they're kind of writing it with the goal of, oh, I want a different audience than the current audience that's there. Whereas I feel like with this book, especially with Jim Zub, the way he writes the characters, how unapologetically accurate it is to Conan's source material. I think that's a huge, huge, thing in its favor that makes it go well. I think the other part, and you and I have talked about this. This was a video we did a few months back, talking about pricing in modern comic books, and this has been one of the things that has really impressed me with Conan is one of the things is the main issues have always been $3.99. That's been a standard across the board. We're 15 issues in, still $3.99. We don't pay a premium for getting, their best artists like sometimes we do at Marvel. And even their event book, the event book is still $3.99. And I think that's another thing that I appreciate out of Titan on this is I always know what this is going to cost. It's always going to be $3.99. It's been that consistently. They may raise at some point, but the whole thing that I appreciate is when you look at Marvel and DC and some of the somewhat price gouging that kind of seems to happen with customers, where Marvel right now, if you want to buy Spider-Man, that's $4.99. If you want to
oh, you
buy
like
X,
Spider-Man, eh? That'll be
yeah,
an extra buck, sir.
extra
Oh,
buck, right? If you want
you like
Wolverine,
Batman, eh? Oh, that'll be an extra
well, you
buck.
can even see it within the same line. X-Men has had comic books, and it's like if you want the X-Men book with the actual X team, that's $4.99. If you want the Jean Grey solo book that we know is probably going to get canceled in 12 issues, that's $3.99. And I like the fact that Titan's been like, you know what, $3.99 across the board. Who knows, it may change, but I really appreciate that from them in terms of even on an
Oh,
event book where if this was Marvel or DC, this event book you're looking at $5.99 an issue
oh
or something
yeah.
like that. And that's been
If
really
it was
cool
a
to see.
Batman super event book, it'd be $5.99.
$5.99.
It would all day long. And who knows how long the indies can continue to put out a book at $3.99. Folks, go support your local comic shop and buy your favorite titles because prices aren't getting any cheaper. And you know, it, anyway, comic fans will pay an extra dollar if it's really good stuff. Um, and smaller presses, as long as you keep buying the books, hopefully it'll stay the same price. But yeah, I mean, this is just great art. I mean, legendary artists have paved the way for what we know Conan should look like.
Yeah,
You
no, I
have
really appreciate that they're not trying to reinvent the wheel. They come
right,
in and they draw him like he should be drawn. He looks like those, classic Frazetta, things that they used to have on the paperbacks back in the day. And
yeah,
I think that's the other part that they're doing so well. As we mentioned, picking the right artist. The other thing that I think they've done incredibly well, across the story arcs, they let the artist and writer team finish the story arc. So like the first four issues of Conan were all Delatorre, and then you had Doug Brathwaite for 4 issues, and then it was Delatorre again, and then Brathwaite for another four. And I think that's such a huge thing because you do have those trade collectors out there. I'm more of a single issue person, but there's a ton of people who buy this stuff by trade. I think it's so cool that if you buy the first trade of Conan, you're going to see Delatorre's art from page one all the way through the end. And I think that's such a huge difference in comparison to like Marvel, where I even look at their premiere book at DC and Marvel. Like DC right now, Batman has two artists like Jorge Jimenez and I think Mike Hawthorne has been on the Batman title, and I think they're both good, but their art styles are drastically different. And so you'll have the first two issues of an arc drawn by one artist, and it's great art. The next one's good, but it just doesn't look like it fits together. It's like, why is this, the to be continued, and things are just drawn so differently? Or you'll see more extreme cases of books like Captain America or things like that, where first
where
three issues are really well drawn, last three issues really
whereas
rough.
like Brathwaite and Delatorre are very complementary of one another,
Yep.
and both drew the thing. That's why when they subbed out Brathwaite for the middle part of the first issue of the run, I was very pleased, because it
Yeah,
didn't
because you had
it
Delatorre
didn't
for the first four, and then Brathwaite comes in.
yeah,
Absolutely.
I was like, man, I don't know which one I like better. And that never happens. That never
You
happens.
really never have a book where you don't mind seeing the backup. I think that's the thing is I genuinely am thrilled when it's a Doug Brathwaite issue because
Yeah,
the art's so good. And then when
it's like
Delatorre's back on, it's good
I
too.
don't
You're not
know.
disappointed either way.
You're killing me here, Tiger. I don't know which one I like better. And they have them both. I mean, that's like hitting the jackpot, I guess.
Well, no, and
Um,
then even you have this Jonas Sharp guy come in for the event book, and he seems to be right in alignment with it, where all the
I
characters look
know. It's
right,
like look at
and
that cover.
he's
That's oh wait, Gerardo did that one. But I
yeah.
mean, the art is great. I mean, look at that splash page. I mean, that could be a Frazetta. It's
No,
just
I think that's, you bring up the splash pages, and that's kind of, I think, the last point that we can get to is one of the things about comic books is I think we get so much now of waste in comic
look at
books in
that one.
terms of, yeah, no,
Look at that
another good
splash page.
example there of just
Oh my
great
gosh.
art. I think so often now we read these comic books, and I've noticed this a lot in some of the DC books I was reading the last few months. There's just wasted pages. You have like it's the Flash's face, and it's all white background with nothing drawn in the background for like 2 pages. And you're like, okay, so I guess you guys just didn't feel like drawing the background this month, or it's very dialogue heavy with no action or stuff like that. What I like about Conan is every single square inch of that page seems to be used to maximize your enjoyment as a reader. The
Look at
backgrounds are
that.
intricately drawn. They do cool kind of panel designs and layouts and
Oh
different
yeah.
things. And I think that's one of the cool things as a reader when a comic book publisher sort of values you and values your time and values your money the way that they do. And yeah, another,
Look
kind
at
of
that little
example there.
panel. Look at those little panels there. I mean, look at that art. I mean, it's so good. And then the blue and the yellow. And yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it's just
it's just something where
it's really well done.
it's everything seems intentional. And I think that's the part that really works with Conan overall is the writing is sharp and crisp. It doesn't ever have where you read a page, you're like, what the heck was the point of that?
And the
Everything moves forward, but
colorists,
there's character development, right? The art complements the story. It all just works together. And I think that's the reason that we like this book so much, is it just you can tell from start to finish on this, it kind of feels like a great movie. And then, like, you look at some of the great films, like I compare like The Dark Knight, right? You can tell from the first frame of that film to the end. Christopher Nolan, when he made that movie, had an intention behind everything that he did. Everything that's in that movie has its purpose. There's no wasted scenes. There's nothing where you're like, what the heck was the point of that? Everything built. And I think that's the cool thing with Conan is from issue 1 through issue 15, going into this event, Everything you read, you're like, I get why this is here. This is building, it's building stakes. There's nothing that's gratuitously just there to be there. Everything has its intention. And it's just so cool to see a publisher who actually values you as a customer and values your money, where they're like, you know what, you're going to put down $3.99. Our job is to entertain you. It's not to lecture you. It's not to tell you that Conan wasn't a great character and here's why we're going to make him better. It's we know you put down your money, you bought a Conan book, and we're dang well going to deliver a Conan story for you. And that's just really, really cool. And I think as a comic book reader, man, I appreciate that out of a book.
Yes, I do too. I do too. And they're doing the same thing with Blade Runner. Like we're waiting for the next iteration. It's going to be Blade Runner 2049 or whatever. And in the meantime, while us Blade Runner fans are waiting, here's this one, and it's done well. And you don't have to, like, if you're new to Blade Runner, oh, you can just jump right in here. You don't have to, you don't have to understand what's going on in the main continuity. And then the other thing that they really do well from all the Titan books is, they have this little
Yeah, your
breakdown.
little summary page. Yeah,
Yeah.
Conan.
So like if
Conan always has that.
it's your first book, like say you bought number two, it'll tell you what's going on. And you appreciate that as a reader because, it might be a month before I pick up another Conan book and you'll get that first page. You go, oh yes, I remember. Of course, I could go back
It
into the
picks up right where you were.
stacks of comics and go back and pick up, issue whatever and reread it. But it lets you pick it right up from where it was. This on the Road of Kings. It's just, I mean,
Yeah. There's
one
so
thing we
much good
don't
stuff in it.
often, one thing we don't often talk about is the colorists. And
Hmm.
this book I just thought was done really well. The coloring. Of course, in Blade Runner, they do an awesome job of it. But this book just has this feel because it's dealing with time travel and different elements of time that you have this like yellow and brown thematic stuff page after
Hmm.
page to give you that antiquity feel, like part of it takes place in the 30s
Yeah,
and
because
part
we're
of it
we're
takes
hopping
place.
in between time periods in the story.
But
Yeah, for
then,
sure.
but and so then when you get to something different, all of a sudden they introduce the blues. And I
Yeah.
don't know enough about colorists and what all they do. I just know this is a great color theme. It's very impactful and it added to the story. Um, and, and I don't know. I just really enjoyed the colors on this one as well. So
Yeah, they're doing a great job with everything from the event books to the main series. And again, we just wanted to make sure we highlight that when it happens because it's something that, when you go to the store, sometimes you get some disappointing books, you get some things you're not happy with every single month without fail. This book has delivered. It's been great to read. And if you want a book that values you as a reader, values its characters, has intention behind what it's doing, and just for all intents and purposes knows the job of a comic book is to sit down and for 10 to 20 minutes, however long it takes you to read, to transport you to a different little place and give you that kind of little bite-sized break throughout the day. This book gets the job done. Really appreciate all the creatives who are on that. Zub, Delatorre, Jonas Scharf, all those folks. They do a great job. Doug Brathwaite, folks like Jeff Shanks who does stuff in the back. It's just fantastic to read as a comic book reader. Me and Mike, we both can't recommend that high enough, man. It's fantastic. If you haven't checked out Conan and you're a little bit, jaded on modern comics, it is definitely, definitely worth your time, worth your investment. Hopefully, you guys get a chance to check it out. And as Mike
oh,
always likes to point out, you get the three staples on the
if it's
Titan
a
book.
Titan book, it's got three staples.
No, and I'll say just even that they build the books well. The books are made on good paper. You don't ever get these
Yeah.
flimsy see-through covers like we sometimes see. They just seem to put a lot of intention and thought into what they're doing. And as a comic book fan, that's really, really cool to see. And I think you guys as readers, if you check it out, you really enjoy it. Let us know what you guys think below. Have you checked out Conan at all? Is it a book that you picked up? If it hasn't been, we would definitely recommend that you do. As always, folks, let us know what you think in the comments. Thank you for your time and for watching. God bless you.
Thanks, everybody.